A millionaire decided to test his new housekeeper by leaving his safe wide open and turning on the security camera, but when he reviewed the footage, he couldn't believe his eyes. Leonid Safonov was a man spoken of with respect and even envy throughout Moscow's business circles. In just 20 years, he had built a thriving investment holding, bringing in steady profits and making his name one of the most recognized in the city. His photos appeared in glossy business magazines, and aspiring young entrepreneurs dreamed of attending his masterclasses. Yet Leonid considered himself just an ordinary man, someone who seized every opportunity life handed him. He lived in a sprawling penthouse in the heart of the city, with panoramic windows framing the glittering nightscape below. Everything about his home was impeccable: luxurious furniture, cutting-edge appliances, stylish artwork adorning the walls. Even the books on the shelves lined up perfectly, as though never read. To Leonid, it wasn't a home. It was a refuge, a place to recharge between endless meetings and trips. Every morning began with the same meticulous routine. At exactly 6:30 a.m., he would step into his pristine bathroom and turn on the shower. Then, donning a perfectly pressed suit, he moved through his day according to an exact schedule, as if he were not a man but part of a precision machine. "If you want to succeed, don't waste time on nonsense," he often reminded his employees, and he lived by that rule. Leonid had no family, and he took pride in that. To him, attachments only distracted from business. Colleagues would whisper behind his back, joking that even his heart probably beat on a schedule, but there was a trace of envy in their voices, because he had achieved what most could only dream of. Despite all the outward success, a deep emptiness gnawed at him. He never spoke of it and drowned it in work. His schedule left no room for distractions, meetings, negotiations, project discussions, a relentless cycle that sometimes made him wonder if escape was even possible. But he pushed the thought away, convincing himself it was all for success. Evenings sometimes found him standing by the window with a glass of wine, gazing at the city and reflecting on how far he had come from the unknown young man he once was. Colleagues respected him for his decisiveness, discipline, and ability to tackle the toughest challenges. Yet behind that veneer, a hidden melancholy lingered. Leonid had mastered the art of concealment. Weakness had no place in his world. Everything seemed perfect. But for whom? For what? Returning from another business trip to Europe, Leonid's mood was, as always, professionally neutral. The flight had been smooth, the deal successfully closed. A successful day. Crossing the expansive hall of his penthouse, he inhaled the crisp scent of cleanliness that marked the work of his housekeeper, Tatyana Ivanovna. She had been with him for 8 years, almost the only person who knew his habits. This time, however, she didn't greet him with her usual polite smile. There was nervousness in her posture as she waited in the hall. "Leonid Viktorovich, may I have a moment?" she began, her voice trembling. He slowed, peering over his glasses, then nodded. "What is it?" he asked, expecting perhaps a request for time off or a raise. Tatyana hesitated, folding her hands in front of her. I have to leave. I'm very sorry, but I cannot work here anymore." Leonid frowned. Her words hit him like thunder on a clear day. He knew her as someone always precise, always reliable, never complaining. "Leave? Why?" he asked, raising his voice slightly, though trying to remain composed. "Oh, it's nothing you've done," she quickly reassured him. "My children decided to move closer to the sea. It's calmer there, better for the grandchildren. My daughter is expecting again, and I want to help, to spend time with the little ones while I still have the strength." Leonid's gaze fell. Family, children, grandchildren, these words stirred something in him, though he couldn't understand why people would sacrifice everything for what he considered trivial attachments. "When will you leave?" he asked curtly. "In a week," she said gently. "I want to finish what I started so the new person won't have difficulties." He nodded, suppressing his irritation. Searching for a replacement wasn't something he relished, but he understood his options were limited. As soon as Tatiana left, he called his secretary, Svetlana Kovalchuk. "Svetlana, I need a new housekeeper," he said. "Find someone with no children, preferably no personal problems. No one who will move, get sick, or wait for grandchildren. I need a calm, modest, responsible woman who won't bring unnecessary fuss." "Understood, Leonid Viktorovich. I'll handle it," she replied. He hung up, thinking, family, nothing but complications. If you want stability, stay away from emotions. The next day, Svetlana called. "I've found a candidate," she said. "A young woman, no children, no family. By all appearances, perfect, good. Arrange a meeting." And that's when the suspense truly began. Leonid replied curtly the next morning. A new housekeeper had arrived at the penthouse. Her name was Olga. She looked to be about 20, shy and unassuming. She stood at the door, eyes lowered, shifting her weight nervously from one foot to the other. She wore a simple gray sweater, a skirt that fell below her knees, and old-fashioned shoes. Her dark hair was pulled back into a sleek ponytail, and thin-framed glasses perched on her nose. "Come in," Leonid said, gesturing toward the sofa. "Have a seat." Olga stepped inside and lowered herself onto the couch, clutching her small bag. "So, you're the housekeeper?" he asked, scrutinizing her closely. "What experience do you have?" "I've worked in one household," she replied softly. "They had a large apartment. I cleaned, did laundry, cooked sometimes." Leonid nodded. Her modest appearance was calming. There was no trace of arrogance or entitlement in her. Everything about her suggested she was ready for a quiet, monotonous routine. "Good," he said. "Cleaning is needed every day. Change the sheets once every few days. Pay special attention to dust. I'm allergic, so every shelf, every corner must be spotless. After cleaning, put on white socks and walk through every room. If the socks stay clean, the job's done. If not—" Olga nodded silently. "Understood?" Leonid asked, noticing her hesitation. "Yes, understood," she whispered. After she left, Leonid leaned back and thought. Svetlana had done her job well. This girl seemed like she wouldn't cause trouble. But despite her perfect appearance, he couldn't shake the need to verify her honesty. The next day, before leaving, he went into his office and installed a hidden camera, pointing it directly at the safe and the adjacent desk. If she was truly as modest and honest as she seemed, he could relax, but he had to be sure. Leonid didn't trust easily, especially with people who had yet to prove themselves. The next morning, he inspected the small steel safe in the corner of his office. It wasn't just a container for documents. For him, it was a habit, a symbol of control over everything he owned. He opened it, took out a few bills, and deliberately placed them in plain sight. Then he left the safe slightly ajar, a silent test. His mind raced. Leonid had learned to rely only on himself. Trusting someone new, even with something as simple as cleaning, wasn't easy. Past experiences with deceit in business had left their mark, and now even small matters were treated with caution. Before leaving, he checked the hidden camera. The lens pointed exactly at the safe and desk. He opened his laptop, confirmed the recording was running, and murmured with a hint of irony, "If anything happens, I'll see it." He collected his things, called the driver, and headed to the airport. Olga would continue cleaning in his absence, an opportunity to see how honest she really was. As the car moved through the city, Leonid reflected on recent events. If she was truly honest and modest, he was lucky. If not, well, he would find out soon enough. A plan ran through his mind. If the footage showed she hadn't touched anything, he would stop doubting her. If she had, he would know immediately. 2 days later, Leonid returned. The day had been exhausting, and he felt drained. But as he walked through the corridor, a pleasant, fresh, lightly floral scent caught his attention. Peeking into the bathroom, he found neatly arranged new toiletries, shampoo, toothpaste, shower gel. He hadn't asked for anything to be bought. "Attentive?" he murmured, raising an eyebrow. Still, he couldn't fully relax. His attention kept returning to the safe and the hidden camera footage. In the office, everything in the safe remained untouched, just as he had left it. But that didn't prove anything yet. Sitting at his desk, he opened the laptop connected to the camera. The screen showed Olga entering the office in her black uniform, methodically dusting shelves and the desk. Her movements were careful, precise, never glancing in his direction. With every second, Leonid felt his tension ease. Svetlana had truly found a good person. But then he fast-forwarded the footage. Olga returned to the office in her street clothes, standing still, seemingly hesitant. His heart quickened. What was she doing? She approached the bookshelf, pulled out an old photo album, and began flipping through it. Then, quickly, she removed a single photograph, glanced around nervously, and slipped it into her pocket. Leonid froze. His hands, clenched into fist-stud rage, flashed across his face. "So it's true," he whispered. The moment Leonid turned off the recording, a surge of fury swept through him. He leaned back in his chair, jaw clenched so tightly it hurt, fingers drumming against the armrest in sharp, restless beats. His thoughts tangled together. Why did Olga need his photograph? Maybe she was a journalist. Or worse, a paparazzi schemer who had played innocent just to dig up dirt on him. That would explain the quiet voice, the modest clothes, the downcast eyes. So quiet. So humble, he muttered with biting sarcasm, pretending, just to pry. His suspicions only deepened. He would call her in. He would look her in the eye and demand the truth. Leonid sat at his desk and pulled out an old photo album, the one he almost never opened. His fingers slowly turned the pages. Each image dragged him back to a past he had spent years trying to bury. But now, knowing one of the photographs was missing, the memories surged back with painful clarity. He found the spot where it had been torn out. The empty corner of the page seemed to scream. Leonid's jaw tightened. He remembered that photo perfectly. In it, he stood beside a woman who had once meant everything to him. Lyudmila. Her name echoed in his mind like a strike of thunder. Her face, blurred by time, suddenly came alive. Laughing eyes, fiery red curls dancing in the wind. He remembered that day. He had been young, hopeful, certain they would be together forever. But life had taken a different path. He leaned back and shut his eyes. The memories cut like a blade. Why that photograph? What was Olga looking for? Was someone digging into his past? Was this blackmail? A smear campaign? An investigation meant to destroy him? Enough, he muttered, snapping the album shut. The decision was immediate. He would summon Olga and get answers. Leonid grabbed his phone and called his secretary. "Svetlana," he said shortly when she answered. "Contact Olga. Tell her to come to my office tomorrow morning. I need to speak with her." "Of course, Leonid Viktorovich. I'll take care of it," she replied. He ended the call and stared again at the album. The empty space felt like a wound that had never healed. He clenched his fist. This time, he would get the truth. The next morning, Leonid arrived at the office earlier than usual. He walked through the spacious lobby where Svetlana was already organizing documents for the day's meetings. "Is everything arranged?" he asked, stopping at her desk. "Yes, Leonid Viktorovich. I spoke with Olga last night. She said she'll be here at the scheduled time," Svetlana reported, watching him carefully. "Good. When she arrives, send her straight in." Inside his office, Leonid sat down and opened his laptop, attempting to focus on work. But his thoughts kept circling back to the missing photograph. He couldn't understand why that particular image had been taken. The only explanations that came to mind were dark ones. Blackmail. Scandal. A calculated attempt to expose him. An hour later, there was a knock on the door. Svetlana peeked inside. "Leonid Viktorovich, Olga is here." "Send her in," he replied dryly, pushing the laptop aside. Olga stepped into the office hesitantly, barely crossing the threshold. Her gaze was fixed downward, as if she feared meeting his eyes. She wore the same modest black skirt and light blouse. She looked like someone walking into a storm she had long expected. "Have a seat," Leonid said, pointing to the chair across from him. She sat carefully, placing her hands on her knees. Her fingers trembled slightly. "Do you know why I asked you here?" he demanded, wasting no time. "Not exactly," she answered softly, though the tension in her voice betrayed her. Leonid leaned back and crossed his arms. "I'll explain. There's a camera in my office. I saw what you did." Olga froze. The color drained from her face. I don't know what you mean," she began, but her voice faltered. "You do," Leonid cut in sharply. "You took a photograph from my album. And now I want to know why." Her eyes widened in shock. "The photograph?" She whispered. "Yes," he said, leaning slightly forward, locking his gaze onto hers. "It was torn out. I saw you do it. So tell me, who are you working for?" "I'm not working for anyone," Olga said quickly, her voice trembling with urgency. "This is a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Leonid raised an eyebrow, his tone turning icy with sarcasm. "So you accidentally tore it out? Or was it for your private collection of vintage photos?" Olga lowered her head and fell silent. Her hands shook as she clasped them together. "Why did you need it?" Leonid pressed on. He didn't believe her. Too many times in his life, people had worn masks of innocence before betraying him. He braced himself for another lie. But her answer stunned him. "That's my mother in the photograph," she whispered. "What?" The word escaped him before he could stop it. "Say that again?" Olga lifted her eyes, and for the first time he saw something there he hadn't noticed before. "Pain. The woman in that picture? She's my mother," she said more firmly. "And the man standing beside her is you?" The word struck him like a thunderclap. Leonid stared at her, frozen. "Your mother?" he repeated, disbelief heavy in his voice. Olga nodded, tears filling her eyes. "I found the photo while cleaning. I took it because I needed to know if what my mother told me was true." Leonid looked at her as if seeing her for the very first time. The words sounded almost too sudden, too shocking to be real, but in her eyes Leonid saw nothing but honesty. Who is your mother?" he exhaled, feeling a strange, warm, painful weight pressing into his chest. "Ludmila Sergeyeva," Olga replied, wiping away her tears. "You knew her 20 years ago?" Leonid couldn't take his eyes off her. The mention of her mother hit him like a jolt, so unexpected that he thought he must have misheard. "What did you say?" he asked again, leaning forward. Olga pressed her hands together nervously, as if summoning strength for what she was about to reveal. She took a deep breath and said, "In that photo, it's you with my mother. Her name is Ludmila Sergeyeva. You knew her 20 years ago." Time seemed to freeze for Leonid. Her words stirred memories long buried. Ludmila, her face emerging suddenly in his mind, red curls, light eyes, and that smile that once made him feel like the happiest man on earth. "Ludmila," he whispered. "You mean she's your mother?" he finally asked, voice barely audible. Olga nodded, avoiding his gaze. "Yes. Mom always said my father died. But one day I found her diary. She wrote that she loved you, that you had planned to marry, and then you disappeared. I didn't know how to find you, but later I saw your photo in a magazine. When I started working here, I realized this was my chance." Leonid fell silent, words failing him. Her story seemed almost impossible, yet he could see only her honest, pleading eyes, full of pain and hope. "You mean," he tried to speak, but the sentence stuck in his throat. "I am your daughter," Olga finally said, tears spilling down her cheeks. The words hit him like a thunderclap. Impossible. He tried to respond, but nothing came out. He stood, pacing his office, trying to grasp what he had just heard. How could this be real? Finally, he exhaled. "Why didn't your mother tell me? Why did she keep this from me?" Olga lifted her head, bitterness in her voice. "She said you abandoned her, that you were afraid of responsibility and simply left." Lightning struck him. Leonid froze, staring at her in pain. "That's not true," he said, voice trembling. I loved your mother. But something happened then. He stopped, struggling to collect his thoughts. Olga watched him, sensing his confusion, and pressed on. When I was little, I always wanted to know who my father was. Mom never spoke about it, but I felt she was hiding something important. I dreamed of meeting you, to see the man you really are. Why did you leave us? She paused, tears glimmering in her eyes. For the first time in years, Leonid felt that this girl held far more than he had imagined. He returned to his seat, looking directly into her eyes. You think I abandoned your family? He asked, trying to remain calm. Olga nodded. Mom said so. But I see. You are not the man I imagined. I don't know what to think, but I want to know the truth. Her voice had no accusation, only a sincere desire to understand. Leonid exhaled heavily. Listen, I don't know what your mother told you, but we were truly happy, until a certain moment. Then he paused, searching for words. Something went wrong. I would never have left her if I had known about you. For the first time in many years, Leonid felt his mask of cold calculation crack. You're telling the truth, he said finally. We need to talk to your mother. Olga froze, fear flashing in her eyes. I don't know how she'll react. She doesn't even know I work for you. It doesn't matter, Leonid said firmly. If she ever loved me, she'll listen. They sat in silence, both contemplating what to do next. Finally, Leonid broke the quiet. Where does your mother live? In the suburbs, Olga replied, her voice trembling. She works remotely, hardly ever leaves the house. Leonid rose, determination in his eyes. We have to talk to her. If this is true, I need to know why it all happened this way. Olga hesitated, fear etched on her face. I'm not sure. She always said you were a coward and a scoundrel. She doesn't want to remember the past. Leonid felt the sting of her words, but held his composure. Even more reason to speak with her. I want to hear it from her personally. Olga nodded. Okay, but please, don't pressure her. Leonid gave a brief nod. Agreed. Tomorrow morning, we go. The next day, Leonid and Olga drove in silence. He stared out the window, lost in thought, while Olga nervously fiddled with her backstrap. The tension in the air was almost tangible. When the car stopped in front of a modest house, Olga whispered, This is it. Leonid took a deep breath and stepped out, ready to uncover the truth that could change everything. Inside the car, he had sat tense, watching the landscape blur past, collected outwardly, but raging with emotion inside. Olga clutched her back tightly, her face etched with worry. The silence was thick, charged with the fear of what awaited them, fear that she might not want to see them at all. Wait. Olga spoke up suddenly, breaking the silence. Leonid didn't turn his head. It doesn't matter. We need the truth, and it's better if we do this now. The car fell silent again. Occasionally, Olga nervously adjusted her hair. Leonid's mind wandered to how drastically his life had shifted in the past few days. He wasn't ready to face the past, but he had no choice. When the car stopped in front of a small, cozy house, Leonid couldn't help but notice how well kept it was. A neat little garden stretched before the home, and an old but sturdy wooden chair sat on the porch. This is it, Olga said quietly, pointing at the house. All right, he replied, stepping out. Olga nodded, pulled the keys from her bag, and, summoning courage, approached the door. Slowly, she turned the key and opened it. Mom, it's me. We have a guest, she called. From the back of the house came a calm voice. Olia, who's with you? A few seconds later, a woman appeared in the doorway. She looked younger than her years. Her reddish hair was neatly styled, and she wore a green dress with a light cardigan. Leonid recognized her immediately. Ludmila. She looked just as he remembered, though time had softened her features slightly. Her eyes widened at the sight of him. She covered her mouth instinctively, unable to speak. For a few moments, silence hung in the room like a heavy curtain. Hello, Luda, Leonid said quietly, keeping his voice calm. Ludmila stared at him as if confronting a ghost from her past. Her gaze flicked to Olga, then back to Leonid. "What are you doing here?" she finally managed, her voice trembling. "I came to talk," he said steadily. "We need to discuss what was left unsaid." Ludmila exhaled sharply, trying to steady herself. "Come into the living room," she said, turning away. Leonid and Olga followed. The living room was cozy. An old sofa, a small table, books lined the shelves. Ludmila gestured for them to sit while she remained standing, arms crossed. "Speak. Why are you here?" she asked, her eyes locked on him. Leonid sat on the sofa. Olga sank down beside him, clearly uncomfortable, while Ludmila remained standing, as if an invisible wall separated them. "I came to learn the truth," Leonid began, staring at Ludmila. "Olga told me I'm her father, but I don't understand why you never told me." Ludmila's eyes hardened. "Why should I have told you anything?" She snapped. "You disappeared. You left me." Her words cut through him like a knife. Leonid frowned, forcing himself to stay calm. "I didn't leave you," he said firmly. "I called. I wrote. You never answered. Then I got a message saying you'd found someone else." Ludmila shook her head, her face a mix of bitterness and confusion. "What message?" she asked. Leonid opened his mouth to respond, but Olga stood up. "I'll leave you two to talk," she said softly, exiting the room and leaving them alone. Ludmila's eyes burned with anger and pain. "So, what do you want?" she asked, her voice quieter now. "I want the truth," he said. "If I am really Olga's father, why didn't I know about her? Why did you do this?" Ludmila sighed heavily and sank into the chair across from him, staring at the floor. For several tense seconds, the room was silent. Finally, she lifted her eyes. "Leonid, I never sent you any messages. I called you many times, but you never answered." Leonid raised an eyebrow in surprise. "Impossible," he said. "I received a message from you saying someone was in your life. Then your number was blocked." "Blocked?" Ludmila repeated, incredulous. "That's impossible." "I never did that." She paused, then clutched her head as if remembering something. "Wait, there was one strange incident. One day my phone disappeared. I looked for it all day and eventually found it under the pillow. It was so strange." Leonid leaned closer. "And you didn't check calls or messages?" "I did. There was nothing. I thought you had just vanished," she replied, frowning. "Wait, Fina," she whispered to herself. "Who's Fina?" Leonid asked. "My younger sister," Ludmila said bitterly. "She was always against our marriage. She was jealous of me, jealous of you. I wouldn't be surprised if she did something inside." Leonid twisted. Everything was falling into place, a strange but logical puzzle. "You think she could have sent the message?" he asked. Ludmila only nodded, her face darkening. "If that's true, she destroyed everything, and I didn't know who to trust." Leonid ran a hand over his face, feeling anger surge. He stared at Ludmila, trying to find words for the chaos inside him. "This changes everything," he finally said. "We need to sort this out. But one thing I know, I don't want to lose what's left." Ludmila remained silent, staring at a single spot on the carpet, her face a mix of pain and regret. Finally, she looked up. She was younger than me by 5 years, she began cautiously. "When we were kids, she was always jealous. First of my parents, then friends, and later, you, Leonid." He frowned, jealousy flashing in his eyes. "Why?" he asked again. Ludmila shrugged slightly. She had always sensed that her sister felt he received more attention. "When I started dating you, she said you were taking me away from her. She was angry that I spent more time with you than with the family," she explained softly. Leonid listened intently, piecing together the fragments. Now it was starting to make sense. "And you think she might have taken your phone and sent that message?" he asked. Ludmila nodded. "It's very like her. She always did things to disrupt my relationships. She liked it when I was upset. She was selfish. But even so, I loved her. She's my sister. She sighed, her voice heavy. After that phone incident, we had a huge argument. I didn't know exactly what had happened, but she said I was spending too much time on you and that you'd leave me. We fought, and a few weeks later she ran away from home. We tried to find her, but we couldn't. Since then, I haven't heard a thing. It's like she disappeared. And now, I think if I'd understood back then what she had done, everything could have been different. Leonid exhaled heavily. Rage still burned inside him, but he knew the past couldn't be changed. She destroyed everything, he finally said. But we can't change what's done. The only thing we can do is try to fix what's still possible. Ludmila looked at him, her eyes carrying both sadness and exhaustion. I want that too, she said quietly. For Olga, she deserves to know she has a father. The two of them sat in silence, the weight of old secrets pressing down, but underneath it, a fragile hope began to take root. Maybe some things could still be set right. Ludmila was the first to break the quiet. Remember when we used to walk along the boardwalk? She asked with a faint smile. You always brought those awful candies. I hated them. But you'd offer them anyway, like they were the most delicious thing in the world. Leonid laughed, a genuine laugh that hadn't come for a long time. Of course I remember. They were my favorites, and I remember how you'd secretly throw them away, thinking I wouldn't notice. Ludmila smiled, tears shimmering in her eyes. You were different back then, she whispered. So simple, so sincere. I loved you so much. Leonid leaned forward, lowering his head. I loved you too, Lyuda. I never wanted it to end like this. I thought you had betrayed me. She reached out, lightly touching his hand. We both suffered. But now we have a chance to fix things, not for ourselves, but for Olga. Leonid met her gaze and nodded. For her, but I hope maybe we can also make things right for us. Ludmila didn't respond, but her eyes softened. She knew the wounds of the past wouldn't heal overnight, yet deep inside she wanted to believe in a better future. Let's start small, she said finally. Let's make sure Olga feels what it's like to have a real family. Leonid smiled. It wouldn't be easy, but he would do everything to make it happen. After the heartfelt conversation, Leonid felt the ache of what he'd lost, the most important parts of his life he had neglected. Sitting on the couch in Ludmila's living room, he gazed at the old photographs lining the shelf. Each one seemed to whisper the life he had denied himself and his family. He took a deep breath and turned to her. I've missed so much, Lyuda. But I want to make it right, he said firmly, though pain lingered in his eyes. Ludmila, still carrying the weight of the past, crossed her arms. She feared opening her heart again to someone who had once been part of her suffering, but she saw something in his eyes she couldn't ignore. And how are you going to do that? She asked softly, wary but curious. Leonid looked at Olga, sitting nearby, eyes fixed on him. I want us to try starting over. For Olga. For us. I know we can't undo the past, but I'm willing to do everything to build something new. Lyudmila thought for a moment. She couldn't erase everything that had happened, yet deep down she knew she couldn't live in resentment forever. For Olga, she was willing to take the risk. It won't be easy, she said finally, but I'm willing to try. Leonid turned to Olga, taking her hand gently. Olga, he said softly, looking into her eyes, I know I've been absent all these years, but I want to be your father if you'll let me. Olga held back her tears, but a few betrayed themselves, sliding down her cheeks. I've dreamed of this my whole life, she whispered. For the first time, Leonid felt the weight of the right choice. He was ready to move forward, no stopping now. When Olga returned to the living room, she immediately sensed a change. Her mother and father no longer seemed like strangers sitting across from each other. Their faces held warmth and connection. Leonid looked up as she entered, gesturing for her to come closer. She sat beside him, a little hesitant. He took her hand. Olga, he began, meeting her eyes, I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. Sorry I missed all the most important moments, but I want to be here now, and I promise I won't fail you again. Her voice trembled. Thank you for finding me, she whispered. The words struck him to the core. For the first time, he truly felt home to her simple thank you meant more to him than any business success. In that moment, he realized there was truly something worth living for. Ludmila watched quietly, not interfering. She saw how her daughter, after feeling lonely for so long, had finally found her father. Her heart swelled with warmth and a quiet joy. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to smile. Later that evening, over a cup of tea, Ludmila decided to share with Olga the story of how she and Leonid had met, memories warm and almost magical, preserved carefully in her heart. We met by chance, Ludmila began, looking at her daughter. He was young, so determined, and I knew right away there was something special about him. Leonid smirked. Yeah, I was too naive back then. I remember preparing for our first date for days. And you laughed at me when I showed up in that stiff, formal suit? Olga listened, captivated. These stories were new to her, like missing pieces of a puzzle finally falling into place. For the first time, she realized her parents had truly loved each other. Ludmila pulled out a box of old photographs from the cabinet. Among them were snapshots from the early days of their relationship. In one, Leonid held Ludmila's hand, and both of them radiated pure happiness. I kept these photos as a reminder of what we had, Ludmila said, handing the box to Olga. Olga carefully sifted through the images, feeling the past merge with the present. The next morning, over breakfast, Leonid brought up something important. I want to propose something to both of you, he began, looking at Ludmila and Olga. We've lost so much time, I want to make up for it, together. Olga looked surprised. It was hard for her to imagine living together, but the idea felt tempting. I don't know, it's such a big change, she said hesitantly. Ludmila looked at her daughter gently. Olga, we should try. This is our chance to be a family. Leonid added, we'll take it slow. No pressure. I just want us to have a real shot at building something lasting. After a pause, Olga smiled. Okay, but only if we take it one step at a time. They agreed to discuss the details, Olga's school, new routines, everything, to make the transition as smooth as possible. When the day came for Leonid to return home to prepare for the move, Ludmila's house felt warm, but tinged with a hint of sadness. She walked him to the door, and they lingered in the hallway. Thank you for trying to make things right, she said, holding back tears. I never expected we'd get a second chance. Leonid took her hands in his. I will never let you down again, he said firmly with unwavering confidence. Olga stepped forward and, unexpectedly, hugged him. Thank you, Dad, she whispered. Those words touched him deeply. They meant more than forgiveness. Leaving, he knew there would be much work ahead, but for the first time in years, he felt a real purpose. He had a family now, and he would do everything to never lose them again. Returning to his spacious penthouse, which he had always considered perfect, Leonid suddenly felt its cold emptiness. White walls, perfectly arranged furniture, it all felt sterile, like a hotel. For the first time, he realized a home wasn't just a place to sleep or work. It should be warm, welcoming, a place for the people he loved. Determined to transform the apartment before Ludmila and Olga moved in, he visited a furniture store. For Olga's room, inspired by her love of art and books, he picked out a large drawing table, a cozy chair, and shelves filled with books. Warm blankets, nature-themed paintings, and watercolor paints completed her space. For Ludmila, he chose details that would remind her of home, an elegant tea set, soft pillows in her favorite shades, and a throw blanket reminiscent of one she loved long ago. He wanted everything to radiate care. The next day, Leonid called Ludmila. Luda, if you need help with your things, let me know. I can send a car or come myself, he offered. We'll manage, she said. But Leonid interrupted gently, firmly.
I can't let you do this alone. There are already so many changes ahead. It's my responsibility.
Feeling the sincerity in his voice, Ludmila paused, then agreed. All right, send the car tomorrow morning. Early the next day, Leonid arranged a spacious SUV with a driver for them and their belongings. Waiting at home, he felt a mix of nerves and excitement, hoping they would feel welcomed in this new space. Before their arrival, he double-checked the rooms, straightened the books, and made sure the kitchen was ready. He even bought fresh flowers for the living room, small touches, but important. When Ludmila and Olga stepped into the penthouse, their first emotions were a blend of awe and delight. The apartment that had once felt cold and empty now seemed alive, full of warmth, care, and the promise of a new beginning. What had once felt cold now radiated warmth and homeliness. This is incredible, Ludmila breathed, looking around. You've done so much. Olga stepped into her room and froze. On the desk were brand-new watercolor paints, books neatly lined on the shelves, and a cozy chair tucked in the corner. Is all of this for me? She asked, eyes wide, turning toward Leonid. Of course, he replied with a gentle smile. I want you to feel at home here. Olga ran her fingers over the new paints. Thank you, Dad, she said, her voice brimming with emotion. Leonid felt a warmth spread through his chest. Her words, so sincere, meant more than he could ever express. Meanwhile, Ludmila entered her own room. Her gaze landed on the tea set she recognized instantly. You remembered even this, she said, turning to him. You've exceeded every expectation. Leonid shrugged, trying to hide his modesty. I just wanted you to feel comfortable. A grateful smile played on Ludmila's lips. She could see he was truly putting his heart into this. That evening, Leonid suggested celebrating their move with a family dinner. He ordered dishes from a restaurant, but also added a few homemade touches, freshly baked treats, and small desserts he had prepared himself. Sitting down together, they felt a little awkward at first, but gradually the tension eased. Olga was the first to speak. I want to go to university, she said, glancing at her parents, but I'm still figuring out what I want to do. Leonid nodded encouragingly. Whatever you choose, I'll always be here to support you. Ludmila poured tea and began to open up about raising Olga alone. Sometimes I felt I couldn't manage, she admitted softly. But now that you're here, Leonid, I feel we can face everything together. Her words moved him deeply. He finally understood just how hard it had been for her all these years and felt the weight of his absence. I promise, he said, looking at Ludmila. From now on, you'll never be alone. The house seemed to glow with warmth that night. For the first time in years, they all felt at peace. The next day, Leonid returned to his office with an unusual lightness in his step. His secretary, Svetlana, immediately noticed the change. Leonid Viktorovich, you seem different today. Did something happen? She asked, smiling. He paused briefly, then replied, Yes, Sveta, I have a daughter now. Svetlana froze for a moment, then realized the meaning of his words. A daughter? That's amazing news. Congratulations, sincerely, she said warmly. Leonid smiled, touched by her genuine happiness for him. At lunch, sitting alone in his office, he reflected. Work had once been his entire world. He had dedicated every ounce of energy to it, believing it could replace everything else. But now he understood. Family was everything. Without the people you love, nothing else truly matters. He decided to take a few days off to spend time with Ludmila and Olga. Work could wait. He would no longer miss moments that could never be recaptured. One weekend, he suggested a walk in the park to Olga. She agreed eagerly. They strolled along the paths, listening to birdsong. You know, Olga said, looking at the pond, I always felt incomplete because I didn't have a father. But now, I'm glad you're here. Leonid smiled warmly. I'm sorry I wasn't there from the start. But now, I'll do everything I can to make sure you never feel alone. They talked about her hobbies, dreams, and plans for the future. Leonid shared stories from his own childhood, offering advice and guidance. On the way home, Olga suddenly stopped and whispered, "Thank you, Dad." Those words touched him to the core. His efforts, he realized, had not been in vain. Late that night, Leonid took out the photograph Olga had carefully removed from the old album. He invited Ludmila and Olga to the living room. "This is one of the happiest moments of my life," he said, showing the photo. For the first time in years, he felt truly content. Ludmila held the picture in her hands and smiled. "It's the happiest day for me, too. I never thought we'd get a chance like this, but now we do." They agreed to keep the photograph as a symbol of their new beginning. Weeks of living together passed, and the bonds within the family grew stronger each day. In the final scene, Leonid embraced Ludmila and Olga, gazing at their joyful faces. "I will never lose you again," he said, feeling a sense of purpose he had not known in years. For the first time, he allowed himself to dream of the future, knowing he now had a family worth living for. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.